All right, welcome everyone to the last webinar of season one, let's say season one of Community Talks. This is a webinar series where I have different community founders as guests, talking about different aspects of community growth, community building, setup, managing, etc. There are many things we can talk about it, and its purpose is for you to get educated on what the hell is community building, should you build one, and what's at stake there. My name is Roman. I am not the founder, but I do have this nice little community on my LinkedIn that named itself Flamingo Tribe. And
Love it.
Pinky, my mascot, and my shirt, overseeing that everything stays on brand. Together, I have a wonderful guest, Ola. I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. Is it Majekodunmi?
Yeah, that was good. That was a good try.
All
I'll
right,
give you that. I'll give you
all right,
that.
sweet. And she's a founder of All Things Money, a personal finance community that has been making a lot of noise in social media and news in the UK. Ola, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to everyone watching here live or on record. Yeah, like Roman kindly mentioned, my name is Ola, and I'm the founder of All Things Money.
Sweet. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your community? How did it
hmm
start? What is it? What is it for? Who is it for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, so All Things Money is a personal finance platform that teaches young adults how to manage their finances effectively, from budgeting and investing to credit cards, mortgages, and everything else in between. Basically, I'm like the Bible you needed when you were leaving school, because we're not taught about anything when it comes to learning how to manage your finances, whether you're I don't know, employed, whether you're self-employed. Literally, I feel like no one's really well equipped to kind of navigate adulthood. So All Things Money is kind of designed to help people through those times. And yeah, All Things Money started 3 years ago in a fun time called the pandemic. I had just finished university. Well, finished university got taken away from me because of COVID, and I had always been like a budgeter slash saver. And then during lockdown, I had a lot of time on my hands to teach myself how to invest in the stock market. And I realized how easy it is to invest in the stock market. And I feel like online, there's so much jargon when it comes to investing that loads of people get put off by it or are overwhelmed by the information. So yeah, I taught myself how to invest, and I got some of my friends investing that same week. And I very quickly learned how many of us young adults should know how to invest in the stock market, because like I said, it's a lot easier than a lot of people think. And yeah, I think as a result of that and their interest in investing in themselves, I was like, okay, forget my friends investing. Everyone should know how to invest in the stock market themselves. So started sharing some tips and information on Instagram. And yeah, 3 years later, it's now my full-time job. I am on Instagram mainly, have a podcast, host webinars, have a live event coming up soon, work with lots of corporate clients, and have been featured in the BBC, New York Times, yeah, quite a few places. But yeah, that's me and why I started it.
Well, that amazing. That sounds amazing because honestly, I am illiterate when it comes to finance and even more so on investing. I was considering stock market and I was considering crypto as well because there's so much noise, there's so much hype about it. There's
Yeah.
so much opportunity as well that I'm aware of, but there's also so much information on it. It's like when it comes to crypto, it's just learning a separate language. When it comes to stock market, that's kind of the same, right? There's just
Yeah.
a whole subject that you have to educate yourself on. And we're not taught anything like that at the university. In my university, we had business finance, and
hmm
my God, we were doing basic math. We were
Yeah.
not doing actual finance. And taxes,
Absolutely.
I'm having headache now. I'm barely in my third
hmm
week of being full-time freelancer. Taxes are a headache.
Yeah. Massively. And this is it, like you said, so I went to school, went to sixth form, studied business management at university, and even as much as I loved my course at university and I love being at university itself, I still, like you said, I run my own business now full time, and everything I got taught there definitely did not equip me to running this business. So yeah.
Well, how do it feel for you before we begin with all the topics? How do it feel for you being thrown into the adult world? with all of these things that are expected of you, but you
Mhm.
just don't know it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for someone like me, I've always been really conscious of how I manage my finances. So I wasn't overwhelmed in that sense when it comes to managing my finances. It was only when I really picked up a book during my placement year, which was called Money, A User's Guide, did I realize how little we are taught about the world of finance. That was when I was like 19, 20. And yeah, I was literally shocked at how little I knew. And then from that, I think it kind of just sparked an interest within myself to kind of learn and self-educate about the world of personal finance. So when it came to leaving uni, I wasn't shocked by anything that came my way, especially when it came to like how taxes work. I wasn't shocked by my payslip because I knew I had to pay X amount of tax. The same when it came to managing my business finances. Yes, obviously tax when you're running a business is very different, but in other aspects, when it comes to like budgeting, saving as a business owner, and things like that, I kind of was a little bit more clued up. But again, not everyone has that kind of same starting position when they're kind of entering adulthood.
Well, it's great that there is a community where people can learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
So because of the nature of your community, it's very personal finance oriented. How do
Yeah.
you create content for people? How does it work? Because you do
Mm-hmm.
have to combine it with the marketing aspect of the whole content creation. Could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I feel like whenever you're trying to build a community, as much as you want your community to be organic, you do need to market it. Otherwise, no one's ever going to find out about it or know it exists. So that's why I'm very vocal on like LinkedIn and other social media platforms to kind of shout about all things money, because it's only when people find my platform, they're like, oh my God, like I didn't know this existed. I wish I knew about it earlier. So marketing is like a key aspect of your business, regardless of what kind of niche your business is. So yeah, so marketing in the personal finance space is really crucial. But that being said, when it comes to sharing tips and information, I think what it started off with is what I wish I knew when I was leaving university. And I think as the community kind of grew, I was able to then be like, guys, what are you struggling with? And what can I produce that you will find helpful and things like that. So having the community really helps when it comes to creating content, because you know what they actually want rather than assuming and guessing. Because obviously when you assume and guess, people might not engage with it as well. And then again, that can really hinder your growth when it comes to growing that community.
Yeah, I think every organization, whether it's a community uh, or a company or a brand, they really need to tune into marketing and understand that this is the driver for growth, especially
Yeah.
in modern world with organic reach that LinkedIn and TikTok give us. I mean, it's insane how many businesses out there start with just thinking about product, and they even go with gut feeling. They don't talk to their audience.
Yes.
And like B2B is full of this type of brands.
Mm.
Um, yeah, interesting. So when it comes to serving needs of your community, yours is also very hybrid in a way. Full disclosure, when I was looking for founders of different communities, the very first list I had just marketing communities because there are so
Yeah.
many.
Yeah.
Yours is very, very niche specific, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious. So what kind of needs do you have to think about it in terms of your community members?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, especially in personal finance. There's so many needs you need to think of, in the fact that people have their personal needs, which is what are they struggling on the day to day. Then we know how much news is updated, especially now more than ever with like changing interest rates, tax thresholds, budgets, and all this stuff. So again, that's another need that needs to be met, in the fact that people need to be aware of what's going on in the world. So that's another need. And then I guess just like a generalized overview of like giving my perspective into things as well, because a lot of people always like to know what I'm doing personally as well. And obviously personal finance is personal, but I think a lot of people like to just know, oh, okay, Ola talks about X, but how does she do X? And vice versa. So I think again, people like to know there's like a personal story behind a lot of what I share as well.
So it's both their personal needs and also
Mm-hmm.
community needs. Can you tell us a bit
Yeah.
more about what kind of needs do people come with to the community?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the time it just starts with the very basics. So like budgeting and saving, like how do I create a budget, how do I start saving? And then I think once they start to grasp that kind of understanding, it's then like, okay, now I know how to budget and save. One of my goals is to how to buy a house, so how do I go about then buying a house? Or I've heard about investing, on it, but how does investing work? Or credit cards, I've just left university and everyone's telling me I need one, do I need one? All sorts. I think like anything you can think about when it comes to adulthood, those are the kind of questions I'm kind of asked, and I'm always happy to kind of answer those questions, because again, no teacher really sits you down and goes, this is how taxes work, this is how X is calculated. This is what you need to get, this is what you don't need to get, this is the bank account you need, this is what they're offering, things like that. So hopefully I've helped a lot of people in the past when it comes to just feeling solid and financially empowered.
Have you had any troubles with delivering on those needs?
Sometimes, obviously, I don't know if we'll touch on this a bit later, but in the UK, there's obviously governing body, which is the FCA, which is the Financial Conduct Authority. And I am not regulated to give financial advice. So that's a huge restriction on what information and tips I can share. So I can give an impartial view. I can share facts and information, but I can't give advice. So that means if someone wants to learn how to invest, I can teach them how to go about it, but I can't say this is where you should invest your money, because again, the FCA will come for my neck, they can sue me, etc., etc. So you have to be very cautious of the information you're sharing. You also want to make sure it's all factually correct. So when I did first start, I used to work quite closely with a friend of mine that was an accountant. So he was able to give me like the solid basic figures just to double check and fact check, because sometimes when you grow a community, you have to be careful that you're not giving false information. So that, I think, especially in the finance world, you have to be very, very careful of as well, because the last thing you want is someone going, that's not correct. And it's embarrassing for me and also detrimental to anyone that's taken that advice.
So unlike other communities, you really need to be careful with the information that you provide.
Definitely.
And I'm not experienced in that field. So you said that you might get in trouble if you do have those kind of problems with less factual information. So what does that actually mean? And how do you make sure that you provide only factual information? How do you create content in that sense?
Yeah, so when I create factual content, it is more less based on opinion and more just hard evidence and hard facts. Because let's say, for example, there's certain tax brackets in the UK that are just fact. This is how it is, and this is how it works. And I think a lot of people do like just knowing the facts anyway. So people aren't always looking to be like, oh, Ola, how much are you saving? But it's actually like, okay, where do I find the best savings accounts? What are they offering? What is an interest rate, for example? Why do I want interest on my savings? Why do I want interest on my, I don't know, lifetime ISA, for example? So yeah, I think a lot of the content I share has to be less opinionated, because when you share opinion, like Alex said, the FCA are ruthless, and obviously you want to be seen credible as well. You don't want to be like swaying people's decisions, because again, I'm not there to do that. I'm just there to educate rather than advise.
So you're more there to educate and show them the options that they can have, rather than
Exactly
telling
that.
them this is what you should do.
Yeah, absolutely. And just not allowing that, showing that young people do have options. Because I think, again, like when I was 11 years old, my first bank account was Barclays. And I know many people they follow the footsteps of their parents when they're growing up, because again, those are their role models. But again, it's only when you're older you realize, oh, there's, I don't know, 15 different bank accounts I can choose from, or there's 10,000 different bank savings accounts I can choose from. And again, knowing that there's options allows you more flexibility, hopefully more financial security, things like that. Because again, some of our parents might not have shared the right tools we needed as well. So I think when you realize your options, then again, that can have a huge positive impact on how you manage your finances.
And because you have to be flexible with the type of information that you share, is the content itself, the formats or the way you present it, is it any different from a regular, say, marketing community?
That's a good question. Different in some aspects. Like, if let's say you're in a marketing community and you run one that has huge opinion on TikTok, a lot of what you're sharing might be based on your opinion. Whereas when I'm sharing content myself, I'm not going to be like, I don't agree with Barclays and their savings account. It's very different, where some people might go, I agree with using TikTok. I don't like TikTok. This is what you should be doing on TikTok. Whereas the content I share isn't really like that. Like I said, it's very impartial. So yeah, I would say it's very different.
So I guess you cannot host webinars like that, inviting guests, because the guests are quite often biased in the ways that they do things.
Yeah, I guess so.
So do you host webinars, by the way?
Yes, so I used to in lockdown. I used to host monthly webinars, probably less so now, as I really want to kind of focus on more in real life events. So we're hosting our second one soon. But yeah, in the past I have hosted webinars. Again, they were all like educational based. So rather than having like maybe like a one-to-one guest chat, although I do have a podcast, so they are very different there. But when I used to do webinars, it's like this is how you save, this is how you budget, this is how you can get investing, things like that. Again, more educational, more factual based. And again, that's what a lot of my community really want.
It almost sounds like finance community by default is more inclusive just because there is lack of bias due to the regulations, as strange as it might sound.
And in some ways, I think for someone like myself and some other people in the finance community, we are doing a good job at what we do, in the fact that we are offering impartiality. Now, there are not many other people that do that. So there's people on YouTube that might be paid by X cryptocurrency platform to be hounding XYZ. You've got people on TikTok that are also sharing incorrect information. So again, it's really hard because obviously you want to be seen as one of the good ones, and there are many good ones out there, but there are a few people that kind of ruin it for the people that are doing a good job. So yeah, again, like I always say to people that do follow me and maybe follow other people online, is to do your due diligence yourself. It's all good and well me telling you something, but you also need to check on that yourself.
Do you have a peer support network or just a network of other communities or content creators in that space then that you recommend people follow?
Yeah, so there's loads. My personal finance community online is huge. Like I'm in really good friends with at least 15 personal finance influencers, and I actually love them. The community is amazing. So yes, there's definitely quite a few people that are out there doing a whole world of good.
I like that you have a two-way community, both with your little group and also your peers at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important because a lot of people don't expect having your own community or having your own business to be lonely, but it is. And having peers really helps because you learn from each other, you grow together. And if someone messed up, then you can learn from it, like FCA knocking on your door.
Exactly.
So, is there anything else that you have to do or that you do yourself in order to be flexible with all the regulations and legal? Because personal finance is personal, so there is a limit to which you can not so influence, but help the community members of yours.
Yeah, so maybe less so now because I do have a couple of people that help me with this now, but before, when I did start, I had to be like hot on the news. Like, I had to know what was going on every single second of the day, because one person that afternoon will message me like, "Oh, Ola, have you seen this? What does this mean?" I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that happened." Well, when I first started, I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that happened," because I normally watch the evening news or XYZ. So I had to be on the news to make sure that, you know, I knew what was going on in the world. Also, I think when it comes to like, which is very different maybe to the marketing community. So before I always used to post on the day, like create content and post on that day, whereas now I've got into the habit of scheduling posts in advance. But I've really learned quickly that you can't do that when you're sharing personal finance information, because again, things change very quickly. So today we've just had an increase in interest rates, but I already had a post scheduled for today. So now I'm gonna have to change that to make sure it's relevant with the news that's gone out. So you have to just be very hot on what's going on. And you have to keep that genuine interest, because if I didn't have interest in people's needs, the importance of financial literacy and what's going on in the news, then I would have got bored of this very, very quickly. But obviously I'm very fortunate. I do love what I do, but yeah, you do just have to be very hot on what's going on in the news.
That sounds stressful.
It can be.
You always have to be on your toes.
Yeah, literally, especially in the UK, because government is doing all sorts and it's changing all the time.
Oh, I'm all the way here in Finland and I hear everything about your government. It's doing things.
Yeah.
So has it gotten any easier to keep up with the news, or having to keep up with the news and updates when it comes to your content?
Yes and no. Yes, in the fact that I now have someone that helps me manage like our Twitter account and have someone that helps me do our Instagram. But also I've learned that you can't meet the needs of everyone every single day. And I think that's a realization I've had to learn recently, because I'm a perfectionist, I'm a Virgo, and I love to know that everything's organized. But I've realized as well, like you said, it can be really hectic. And sometimes if a post hasn't gone out on the day something's changed, it's also not the end of the world. No one's going to die because of it. And people appreciate the hard work that goes, well, some people appreciate the hard work that goes into running your platform, and know that you can't be hot on it every single day. So I think, yeah, yes and no, but I think sometimes you just have to have a reality check and be like, I can't be perfect all the time, because yeah, posting every single day for 3 years can be, it's tough. It
is. I've been posting allegedly, every
Mhm.
single day for more than a year.
Yeah,
Had to take breaks for a few days, or I think one time
exactly.
for 10 days, just because it accumulates, it becomes hard.
It
One,
does.
one time, very off topic, last summer, I think, I started posting twice a day, every day, and that led
God.
quickly to almost being burned out, or at least super overwhelmed. And then I had
Yeah.
10 days of just digital detox. So
Hmm.
it's good that you have people in the community that acknowledge that, because not
Yeah.
everyone does. Everyone has very
No,
different
exactly.
expectations. So tell me about the journey of your community. You've grown it for how long now?
Nearly 3 years.
Nearly 3 years.
Hmm.
What hiccups have you had along the way?
Oh, hiccups. Well, I haven't had any issues with the FCA, so that's been good. In terms of hiccups, I and this is not sounding big-headed. I don't think I've encountered many hiccups. I think what I have encountered is days where you just let you let social media get the better of you, in the fact that when you're posting every single day, you fall victim to caring a lot about the metrics. Like, you stress about how many likes your post has got, the shares, the reach, and that can really, really get you down sometimes. And that can also really impact on your motivation to want to continue posting, because you're like, what's the point? Because no one's liking it or no one's engaging with it, etc., etc. And obviously you fall victim to the algorithm and all that stuff. So I guess when it comes to hiccups, I think the bumps in the road that I've had in the last 3 years is just sometimes I'm like, I've lacked that motivation, or the want to post anymore has gone because of vanity metrics. And I think that can be a huge barrier that a lot of us have to try and overcome, and just have to be like, it doesn't matter if like your post gets 5 likes. That 5 likes means that 5 people at least liked it, and that might have helped them in some way. And yeah, I think that's probably my biggest one of my biggest lessons I've learned when running a community.
That's so relatable to everyone who creates content,
Yeah.
self
Mm-hmm.
included. Sometimes your posts just don't perform as well as you hope, but that's okay, because if you actually look at the bigger picture, like I like to say recently, that there is no point comparing your growth week on week or every few weeks. Look at the monthly growth, because
Yeah.
if you look at the monthly growth, you zoom out and you see that you're actually growing. Maybe a bit slower this month than last month, but you are growing.
Mm.
um, Sophie has to drop off. No worries. Thank you for joining for however much you could. Wonder if it was your question. We will answer it
Mm-hmm.
later during the webinar. Everyone who is still here, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll answer them shortly. Back to the hiccups. Is there anything within the community? Do you have a platform where your community is hosted?
So the biggest part of our community is on Instagram.
Okay.
Whether or not I love that, I'm not sure, because obviously I'm at the mercy of Instagram. But we are there mainly, and we also have like a regular newsletter, got a podcast. We've also got a Facebook group. So yeah, we're kind of like pocketed across a few different platforms.
So you said that FCA has not been a problem, but due to the nature of sensitive information that you might be sharing, or factually sensitive,
Mm.
have you had any hiccups with the people in your community, someone calling you out or saying this is not factual, or saying or comparing you to other influencers, for
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
example?
Fortunately not from like I haven't had like any negativity on my posts
Okay,
that I can
that's
think of
good.
off the top of my head. What I have had, so I've done some bits of media with some brands. So I've like did like a string of videos for the BBC recently, and I received a lot of hate from that.
Okay.
Which was very interesting. And I think it's hard with personal finance because it is personal to you. So some tips might be really revolutionary to someone, and they might not be to someone else. Someone else might find that very condescending. And the tips I've always shared on my Instagram to my community, they've always loved the tips I've shared. So they've never seen it as oh, you're looking down on me type piece, or oh, you're taking the mick, or you don't take this seriously. Whereas I think when I did the work with the BBC, it was a completely different audience that I kind of reached, and a lot of those people in that audience didn't love what I created, and that created like some backlash, some negative emails, some negative comments, which I guess you just take on the chin, because obviously not everyone's going to love your content, not everyone's going to love your tips and advice, which is completely fine. So I guess learning how to deal with that has definitely been one of the biggest lessons as well recently.
Well, everyone has to deal with them at some point, I reckon.
Yeah.
Also, surprisingly, haven't had too much negativity on my comments. I assume it's going to happen at some point. I'm mentally ready to.
Yeah.
Maybe I had once when I posted about the war in Ukraine. That post went quite viral with over 1
Really.
million impressions. And
Wow.
because it goes so viral, it gets exposed to too many third-party connections that have no idea who you are, and they take everything out of context. And it was very much a topic related to politics. So there was a lot of couch politicians I did not dare to even read comments from. We do have a question from the audience. It's anonymous, and the question is, what do you think has been the key to your success in building a community on a topic that can sometimes be considered dry and unsexy?
Very good question. I think one of the biggest key, especially when it comes to personal finance, and what I found is being relatable, being able to share information that, like you said, can be very boring, unsexy, but making it fun, making it more exciting. I always joke, like, I'm a 25-year-old woman that has their finances in check, but loves to go out and see their friends every weekend. So having that very relatability element, I think, is really important, because people don't just see me as this corporate woman that wears a suit every week, which has never been me, will never be me. So yeah, I think that's really important. But also shouting about your community in places that you know people are going to need it. So I'm not someone that likes to sell themselves at all. I hate it. I cringe a lot, but I have seen the value in shouting about all things money in rooms. I know people are going to appreciate it. So, you know, now I think I'm more confident about doing it, rather than before I used to really cringe and be embarrassed about what I do. But now I think whenever I shout about it, there's not ever been a person who's like, God, that's such a rubbish idea, or why are you doing that? At the beginning, they might have had that, but now I think where it's grown and I've seen how many people it's actually helped, I think shouting about it has really, really helped grow that community and has allowed me to be motivated, because obviously it's great when you see your community grow. So there's clearly a need for what I'm sharing at the moment.
That's wonderful. And when you refer to the rooms that you shout at, what are examples that could be? Universities, perhaps?
Yeah, so because my work's so multifaceted, that could be if I'm going to a network event, which could be with just business professionals. That might just be an event that I've spoken at. That could also be like the Facebook groups I'm part of. Like, I'm in so many like young, Facebook groups that are filled with young women. So again, loads of people always often asking the same personal finance questions. So that's when I'm like, go give All Things Money a follow, because you'll find that information there. And again, people don't know what they don't know. So you might think, oh, my platform's rubbish because it's not growing. That might not be the case. It's just the fact that the people that you need to reach aren't being reached. And sadly, sometimes you need to take your online presence in person as well. And I think recently that's probably where I've got the most traction, the fact that now I'm talking about it more in person, because we're no longer in lockdowns, fingers crossed. That again can do a whole world of good for your community as well.
So basically what you're saying is, don't be like everyone else, build a personal brand and shout about it, because there is a need for it as well.
Yeah, exactly that. There is, I always think, you might think your business isn't niche, and there might be 10,000 other people that do what you do, because there's definitely a lot of people that do exactly what I do, but a lot of people, which I've learned now as well, will never share information the way you do. And so some people might not love what I deliver. They might like it from delivered by someone else that doesn't look anything or sound like me, which is fine. But there are people that also love the fact that it comes from me specifically. And that is something maybe people can take away as well. And the fact that you might be overwhelmed by how many people are doing the same thing as you, but they won't deliver it in the exact same way. So that's always your USP.
Love it. Love it. And I still have to emphasize the personal brand part of it.
Yes.
Entirely. Because I've been doing some research for a client, and they're targeting finance creators who are in the, I guess, older age bracket, millennials above, and they're quite often in corporate or fintech, and their content is nothing like yours. Yours has welcome, cheerful kind of vibes, but of course with a serious tone of finance. It's very approachable. Whereas the majority of finance content from corporate that I see honestly, your carousel, digestible, scrollable, like I can read through it. I know finance now. You take the corporate, they take some weird format, and it's literally this empty, lifeless Google Doc screenshot with a shit ton of text, and it's also
Yeah.
very small. So you actually have to zoom in and try to digest it, like one page, reading through one of that pages. You could spend time going through entirety of your content on Instagram.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that makes you stand out by 100%.
Oh, thank you, Roman.
And I think that's one of the, again, I don't know the personal finance industry, but I think compared to at least the majority of content down there, you stand out big time.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Well, one other question I have is, if you were to start over your community, what would you do differently?
You have to think. I was having this conversation the other day. I think I would put my face on there way more. I was really good actually when I first started All Things Money on Instagram. I'd do like an IG back in the day, IGTV every other weekend. So I'd always like ask people questions from my community, film myself answering those questions. They might have taken 6 hours to film because I hated to film myself back in the day. And I wish I kind of continued with that, because I think, again, now I've got the idea of like vanity metrics block me from wanting to film my face on there. So I think that's probably something I'd change, and hopefully I'll change in Q2 in the fact that I want to be more. I think as much as I love sharing the content, it's digestible. I don't think people get the real me or my personality on Instagram, whereas on the podcast, people are like, oh my God, like I love when you say this or when you said that, I related to that, whereas I think Instagram lacks that kind of personal brand or personality. So I think that's something I really want to hone in on in the next couple of weeks, just be like, get my face out there again and start filming content, falling in love with filming myself again, because I've fallen out of love that big time.
Well, I hope this webinar is helping you regain that confidence a little.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I had another question. Do you have any questions for me, perhaps?
Yeah, I guess when it came to your community, what was your biggest issue or struggle that you had to kind of overcome?
My biggest struggle has always been, and I think I still doubt myself on that, is whether my content delivers the value my community needs. Because I think that's a challenge of communities like mine and yours, which is just a following theoretically. You don't have direct communication with all of it, right? You just speak to some people. And those people also change throughout your entire growth.
Yes.
So that thing, especially now me pivoting away from the Flamingo guy talking about personal branding to Flamingo guy all of a sudden talking about community building, hosting this webinar series. Not too much of a pivot, but there's a difference.
Yeah. No, I get that. I completely get that. But I think, and again, you shouldn't rely on vanity metrics, but you also, over time, you can really get a good gauge and to be like, this definitely works, or this definitely didn't work. This is what people love. This is what people didn't love. So I think sometimes, as much as I hate those likes and the reach and whatever, it does help in terms of making sure you are providing value at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, and keep talking to people in your community really helps. We have a question from Alex as well. What do you think makes the perfect recipe for paid collaborations and introducing your community to brands?
Good question. What makes the perfect recipe for paid collaborations and history? For paid collaborations, I think, so on Instagram, so fortunately a large part asked me for a friend, me. And so I was fortunate when I started, working with brands is a large part of my revenue stream. So I think that comes down to being personable, having your face on there. I think things are kind of dwindled off because my face isn't on there as much, but I do think being consistent and showing brands that you are consistent enough definitely helps. Having your face on there, showing your personality wherever you can, whether that's on LinkedIn, whether that's on Instagram and TikTok, for example. TikTok's a great place for paid collaborations as well. And when it comes to introducing your community to your brand and to a new brand, I think it's really important that your community has trust in you already. So when it comes to actually giving advice and recommendations, you want them to know that they can trust you already before being paid. So they're going to give you you're going to give them that value already for free. And then now they say, oh, well, I was actually recommending this brand. but I've actually sometimes recommended brands that I'm now getting paid to recommend. So again, that's just a double win, because again, I've always said in my community, and when I first started, I would never promote a brand I will never use myself, or something I've never tried, or something that isn't FCA regulated, for example. And I make that very clear to my my community as well. So they know I'm not just taking money for the sake of taking money. Like, it'll be very random if all of a sudden I'm like, guys, go take a loan from this loan shark company, and they'll be like, Ola, goes against everything you've ever preached. So again, I think it's really important to stay authentic with what you do as well.
So
hopefully that helped.
Stick to your values, have a strong peer network, I will add there as well, so that those collaborations just naturally come to you. And make sure that whatever you use and collaborate with is something you probably have used yourself or would use yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
There's definitely a couple of tools out there for LinkedIn creators that have reached out to me, but I just don't want to use them. As a marketer, my tool stack is already full. Otherwise, you can have 100 tools and then super broke because you're paying for all of them. You got to be mindful about it.
100%.
I had another question for you. I think it's a follow-up to the anonymous question that we had. Due to the nature of very unique niche, as someone might say, dry and unsexy, have you had difficulties growing your community?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Sometimes I think, and it's not discrediting any marketing communities out there at all, sometimes I think I might have found it slightly easier to maybe grow a marketing community, or how to run your business community, something like that. So I think personal finance, again, can often seem boring and sexy, but then I do also think it's just making sure that people know you exist. Because again, how can people find you? It's all good and well saying you want to grow on Instagram, but if people don't know you on Instagram, then they're never going to find you. So I think it works two ways in the fact that, yes, you need to grow and post consistently, but posting consistently isn't always enough. You do need to shout about what you do and what you offer. So yeah, I do think sometimes personal finance can be hard to grow, but then also when I tell everyone what I do, they're like, oh my God, I need to follow it right now because I need that. So again, like I said, people just might not know you exist. And I think that's definitely the case for me.
So it really directly correlates to one of the previous answers you gave, that you need to just put yourself out there a bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you are a community founder thinking about being one, don't be afraid to build your personal brand and shout about it as much as you can. Consistently as well. I think you can't disappear for 2 months and then come back and expect my community is not active. What's going on?
Exactly.
Interesting. Well, if there are any more questions from the attendees, please drop them in the chat or Q&A. Tapas, if you have any questions, please let us know. I ran out of questions, so
you grilled me, to be fair. So
yeah, I mean, we are pretty efficient at this.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Good conversation. It's given me a lot of food for thought as well, which I needed.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully some of it maybe is going to end up as a content. How much of those brand partnerships do you get? Oh, and also another question. You have been featured in quite a few newspapers, right? You've been in Financial Times, Business Insider. I'm sure that has helped your community grow. How did you end up in there? What's the story behind those successes? Good
question. I wish I could tell you, to be completely honest. I have been very, 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 very fortunate in the fact that all of it has been inbound. Some that I didn't even know had happened until I get, because now I know that Google Alerts exist, so you can find out if you've been featured somewhere. So now it's kind of just like a ping. So like Elle magazine, I didn't know I was featured in that until so a friend of mine came across it online. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Or like a lot of like journalists have emailed me directly asking for like my input or my insight into something. So again, that could be taken, let's say in January, and then like 5 months down the line, they're like, oh, by the way, it's in print now. I'm like, what? I was like, I forgot that even happened. That was with the New York Times. So yeah, I have been very fortunate that it has all kind of been inbound, but I know there are lots of journalists on Twitter and that a lot of people I know kind of like follow just to see if they are looking for like comments and things like that. So that can be a great way to kind of get yourself in the press if you do want to do that. And I also think there's loads of Facebook groups or like press companies that can help you get into press as well. for me, I mean, PR, I've heard they're very expensive. So that's not something I would personally pay for, but depending on your business, you might need to pay for PR. So that's something that can be great in terms of boosting and getting your name out there too.
If you ever consider doing PR strategically, you probably know Saffron Sumner. We had a
Yes.
webinar with her in this series, and we're talking
Mhm.
exactly about that, how to secure PR and brand partnerships
Yeah,
community. She knows everything you need to know.
she does. Very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable.
If you want to even increase your inbound of PR opportunities,
Mhm.
she's your person. We have another question from Alex.
Okay.
Talking about brands, what do you
Mhm.
wish they knew about working with communities like All Things Money?
Oh, what do you wish they knew about working? When it comes to working with brands, I'm trying to think. What do you think they wish they knew? I think when it comes to some brands that aren't well versed on social media, I wish they knew that just because I have 17,000 followers doesn't mean all 17,000 people are going to see my post that they paid me to create. That would be amazing, because then I'd be growing every day if all of my followers always see my content. Paid, unpaid, it just doesn't work like that. And I think brands are a lot better now. But when I first started off, some brands were like, oh, that reach was a lot lower than I thought it was going to be. But I've never oversold myself. They've just come in with a overarching expectation, which I think definitely got better now. But at the beginning, it was very high pressured in the fact that you think your engagement's rubbish and they've paid for that. So yeah, I think brands are definitely better now. But at the beginning, I used to be quite stressed because they'll be like, well, this isn't what we paid for. I'm like, well, you pay for my skills and expertise and how much time it takes me to create the content, not just my following. So yeah.
I can tell you that even the centralized communities like Tacit's LinkedIn Creators Club, if
Yeah,
you have 300 people on your Slack channel, that doesn't mean that every message is going to be seen by all the 300 people.
exactly.
People have lives, and even if
Yeah.
they pay for a community, that doesn't mean they're tuned in 24/7.
Exactly that. But I think people are getting better, but at the beginning, it definitely was something that used to cause me a lot of stress.
Is there anything that brands should consider regarding communities like yours because you're in finance and not something else?
um,
Do you have to inform them on the whole FCA and
oh no, to be fair, a lot of the brands I work with are fintech brands. They are all very, very well versed on how the FC works. And I think this is something that's very different to, say, a marketing community where they might be paid to promote a platform or product or service, in the fact that when you're working with like these FCA regulated brands, there's a lot of regulation that goes behind the scenes. So there's things that I can say, can't say, the amount of edits that go through and that they have to approve through compliance. Like, it's very long-winded. It's not just the case of download this app, guys, but it's like, oh no, you can't say you should do this, or you could, like, the wording terminology can be a lot. So a lot goes on with the paid partnerships when you work with fintech brands, a lot.
does it ever bug you that it's never so straightforward?
Oh yeah, yeah. And then it reminds me how much why I charge how much I charge, because it is not just a case of this is the infographic that gets revised. Like, what I think my longest time it took me to get from creating content for it to go to approved was like 6 months.
Wow, 6
It
months.
is long. It can be so long, a lot of backwards and forwards. So yeah, 6 months I think is probably the longest stint of time I had working with the brand, from the day it was created to the day it went live. So yeah, it's not
So
all sunshine and rainbows.
I don't have much experience in what I'm about to say, but it sounds like when you are in personal finance field, community-wise, even, you need to expect corporate level communication
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I've learned that very rapidly. Very
just because of
rapidly.
all the regulations and all the little things,
Yeah.
quirks.
Mm.
Interesting. We have another question from Tapas. A question to
Okay.
both you and me. Tapas is saying Jake Ward correctly observes that brands still avoid LinkedIn. How does community building change that?
Good question. Shall I go first?
Yes, please.
I think when it comes to brands avoiding LinkedIn, I don't think they're purposely avoiding it. I just don't think they realize how much LinkedIn has changed and revolutionized. So I think a lot of brands, despite there being TikTok, despite there being like podcasts and things, a lot of inquiries still want me to post on Instagram. And I don't think that's stemmed just because of my following, but I think they just believe Instagram works best. So I think it's brands just aren't aware of the power LinkedIn holds yet. And I think that will change very soon, especially as more people become these huge LinkedIn influencers, which I'm not just yet, but one day maybe. And I think maybe growing that community on LinkedIn is really important in the fact that if you can show that you're honing in an engaged community, you shouldn't then just be waiting for brands to reach out to you, because that's never going to happen. What you need is to have a list of brands you want to work with, reach out to them on that medium that you want. So if it's LinkedIn, it's LinkedIn. You message them on LinkedIn and be like, look, I've got this community. This is what I can offer you. I would love to work with you, X, Y, Z, and give them reasons why they should work with you, especially on LinkedIn. So give them those positives. And yeah, I think there's no reason why they wouldn't. I just don't think they've been given, for some people, they haven't been given a good enough reason to use LinkedIn over other social media platforms.
Totally agree with that, because I actually had a post earlier today talking about that the majority of LinkedIn is still pretty much dinosaurs that use it like a CV platform from 2007. But there is lack of awareness, definitely, when it comes to how the platform is used right now, what kind of creators there are, the type of conversations and topics that are popular right now. I mean, no one cares about CVs that much, to be honest. It's more about work-life balance, work conditions, everything regarding remote work and all of that. But I think another reason why a lot of brands might not be actively building communities on LinkedIn has to do with expectations. And it's either they expect wrongly or they expect very differently from what community is. To elaborate, a lot of brands I know, they think community building is easy and can be dumped on your marketing intern. And that's just not the thing, especially if you already have a presence on other channels and then you decide to come to LinkedIn. At this point, every social media channel should have a separate social media manager, because every channel is so different. So it's the expectations. They think that it's easy and it's doable. They can just, YOLO it. From all the conversations with you, other founders, and throughout my pivot towards community, what I've realized is that people don't actually realize how much work it goes into setting up your community, managing it, keeping it alive, growing it. It's at the beginning, it's a 24/7 job.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that in the fact that building, so really this year was the year of like building my personal brand. So I was like, I'm going to build my own personal brand on Instagram alongside All Things Money. Now, when you have a community of 18,000 people, you get desensitized into how big that number is, because now I'm trying to get people to follow my own personal LinkedIn, my own personal Instagram. I'm like, God, like I'm getting reach of like 400 people, and then my Instagram post on All Things Money can get nearly 10,000, 11,000 people like reach organically. So it just again shows how actually it is really hard to grow a community. We should give ourselves credit where credit's due, because now I'm trying to build another platform. Like, God, this is hard. I don't think I have it within me to try and grow another one on the platform. But yeah, I think again, a lot of hard work goes into growing a platform. And I think loads of people take advantage of that.
Definitely. And it's advantage and mismanagement. Even if you have good intentions, a lot of brands just dive head first into it, and then they realize, well, this is not as we expected it, and they wrap it up, or they mess it up, or they just not admit anything, and they keep dumping it on their intern. Sorry for all the interns that are watching. If you have to do it and manage your boss's personal brand, because that's becoming a thing too.
But yeah,
I'm praying for you. We have a comment from Alex as well. As a big fintech brand marketer, I find our LinkedIn engagement is more from industry people as opposed to DN community members. Do you have any advice on appealing to those younger members?
Yeah, I think it's tone of voice. So when there's, especially in the fintech space, fintech companies have their fintech LinkedIn pages, which is not a problem, but they are very corporate. Whereas what I think they need to adopt, if you want to attract more Gen Zs people on the platform, you need to change your tone of voice. That's like copying what Monzo does on Twitter, but bringing it to LinkedIn, or those tongue-in-cheek kind of content posts that you see on LinkedIn and Instagram, that needs to be brought did I say? Yeah, that's just seen on Instagram and Twitter. You want to be bringing that onto LinkedIn if you want to increase your engagement on there and attract those young people. Otherwise, again, you're just going to be overlooked because again, you're seen as that corporate body on there.
And in addition to that, also encourage your team and your boss to grow their personal brand, to and that corporate brand, because yes, there are a couple of people there that have successfully grown their company pages. They're engaged, there are communities around it, but you cannot ignore the fact that personal pages have what, 8-10 times more reach than company pages.
It's very true.
Plus,
Yeah.
even if you take the algorithm out of the equation here, just the fact that there is a face of a person behind the information that you're sharing, that's already more approachable. And definitely the messaging. I think Gen Z speaks in emojis, acronyms, and memes. And if you are not ready to communicate in that, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah, massively.
YOLO.
Yeah, and I think it's harder for the fintech brand to have that tone of voice, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to engage them.
So those are the questions that we had so far.
Amazing
conversation. We have around 5 minutes left till we wrap up the webinar. If everyone in the chat has any more questions, loving the conversation here, please drop them below now. If not, just want to mention that tomorrow, hopefully, if I get my shit together, I will send the recording with the webinar. You will receive that plus any relevant links. Are there any resources that you would like to have? And Ola, are there any resources that you think the attendees could benefit from?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the email. And
yes.
Yeah, is there any like a starter kit that you have for people who dive into personal finance?
Yes, I don't shout about it enough, but I have 7 ebooks that you can purchase on my website. So lots of different options. My website is allthingsmoney.com. Got, like I said, covers like the bare basics of how to manage your finances, how to start a business and how to manage the business finances, how to loads. There's there's a lot. So yeah, feel free to go there or on my Instagram at allthingsmoney_, which is where a lot of content is kind of created. So yeah, definitely check it out.
Yeah, and as I said, I'll be sharing all of that tomorrow. Also, heads up to everyone who's attending now, anyone who is watching the recording, at this point. Hopefully, I have already shared the link to all the previous webinars. These webinars are all recorded. They will be freely available. You don't need to submit any form, share your email. I don't care about that. You can watch the recording. This is for you to get educated and hopefully get better at community building and setup. That being said, I have a request for anyone who is attending and watching. If you know a badass community founder like Ola here, or any of the previous founders that I've talked to, let them know and let me know that you would like to have them on, because season 2 of this series has been highly requested. I have a couple of people in my mind, especially Joe Glover, because we had a little bit of hiccup with the schedule, but he promised to show up in season 2. And I need more. I need more founders, and not just marketing communities. We can talk about Twitter. We can talk about Discord. If there's a community for flamingos, they're going to be #1 most requested one. Guinea pigs, whatever you want. Sustainability, climate tech, I'm all about it. If there is a story, I want to share it.
Brilliant.
I feel like I need to turn it into a podcast.
You do. I was literally just thinking that.
I don't know. I do have recordings, and I'm pretty sure I can easily repurpose it. Yeah,
definitely. You'd be silly not to, personally. That's my personal opinion.
They can't let me get my shit together and sort my, I don't know, profile. My about section still says it's under construction.
Oh God, yeah. But you got a VA now that can hopefully help you create a podcast. So
for sure.
Giving her extra work.
For sure. We got a lot of work to do together. All right. No more questions, seems like, and we're gonna start wrapping up on that. Thank you everyone who has attended. Thank you, Tapas. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Sophie, and a bunch of other people who are sitting in the chat or were sitting throughout the webinar. Thank you, dear watcher, for tuning in for the last webinar of this season. I will see you in season 2 on my LinkedIn, any other event that we're hosting. And I want to thank you, Ola, as well, for jumping last minute, also on the day that you're not feeling well. It's been a pleasure. And yeah.
It really has. No, thank you very much, Roman, for having me on. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And Tapas, should I actually answer this question real quick?
Go on, why not?
Okay, one add-on question. Does the algorithm affect the community engagement? If you are on a social media platform, yeah, definitely. But as with anything else, write and create for your community, optimize for algorithm. That means readability, the hooks, and all other things, but don't try to write for algorithm. That thing changes all the time.
Yeah.
We don't even
Yeah.
know how it works 100%, but human psychology is something that kind of stays the same. Yeah. One last add-on question. Hope it answered real quick. All right, I gotta run. Thank you so much. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thanks so much, Roman.